Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome everyone here this morning to the 7th meeting of the Public Utility Commission for calendar year 2014, and I'd ask that you join us this morning in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first matter on this morning's agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 6th meeting, and it's a pleasure to recognize Commissioner Brown as editor of the minutes. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from the March 6th meeting, and I move that they be approved as submitted.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. It's a pleasure to welcome to the podium to begin public meeting Ms. Cheryl Walker-Davis. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of your various offices and bureaus, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items, commencing this morning with matters on behalf of the Bureau of Audits. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the Bureau of Audits' recommendation to make the Management Efficiency Investigative Report involving the Peoples Natural Gas Company, LLC, public, noting the statement of Chairman Powelson.
So moved. Second. I'd like to have my statement entered into the record as I've read it in its entirety. I simply want to take this opportunity to first off commend our Bureau of Audits on their hard work with regards to this Management Efficiency Investigation Audit. And I think it's fair to say that Peoples Natural Gas has made continual improvements to their overall operations, both in terms of capital deployed for pipeline replacement and supply chain management best practices. I also want to take this opportunity this morning to commend the company's management team for their steadfast commitment to accelerated replacement of higher risk pipelines throughout their distribution system. Commission audit staff noted in their findings that in response to the 2011 tragic explosion in Allentown, Peoples proactively implemented its smart mobilization plan, which targeted the removal and replacement of all cast iron and unprotected bare steel pipelines and associated service lines in the service territory. In fact, Peoples was one of the first companies here in the Commonwealth to implement a more aggressive cast iron bare steel replacement program. And in accordance with the requirements set forth in Act 11 of 2012, the company has also submitted its long-term infrastructure improvement plan and has made a strong commitment to making massive investments in its distribution system. The Commission strongly supports any attempts by our natural gas distribution companies to actively replace hazardous cast iron bare steel pipeline. Realizing the company has now acquired the former Equitable Gas Distribution System, the Commission strongly recommends that Peoples Natural Gas continue to look for new business synergies that deal with legacy, unaccounted for gas issues in and around the Equitable transmission system. Moreover, it is critically important that the company management look to refine some of Equitable's outdated back office billing systems and look to adopt more rigorous training programs for the newly integrated Equitable employees. Last point I'll make here this morning is with the potential reauthorization of Chapter 14 on the horizon, I would encourage Peoples management to adopt the follow-up recommendation by the Commission's audit staff, which simply asks for the company to refine the collections process so that the company is comparable with other Pennsylvania NGDCs here in the Commonwealth. So with that, I'd like to have my statement again entered into the record. And is there any further comments? Hearing none, any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Continuing with the presentation of items on behalf of the Bureau of Audits, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendations to release both the audit report of Peoples CWP, LLC, involving its Universal Service Program Writer, as well as the recommendation to release the audit report and implementation plan associated with Citizens Electric Company, Wellsboro Electric Company, and Valley Energy's focused management and operations audits.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Bureau of Consumer Services, on page 2 of the agenda, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation regarding the Philadelphia Gas Works Universal Service and Energy Conservation Plan for the period of 2014 to 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, in omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the items commencing on page 3 with the recommendation in the proceeding involving the Fairview Township and Blue Mountain Reading Railroad matter, and continuing with all items on pages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 through and including the joint petition for approval of an interconnection agreement between Verizon Pennsylvania LLC and Global Crossing Local Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Turning now to matters on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, it is recommended in omnibus fashion that the Commission adopt all items commencing with the recommendation involving the Tri-State Household Goods Tariff Conference, Inc., rate increase request, and continuing with the recommendations appearing on pages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 through and including the rate increase recommendation with regard to John K. Kane, TDBA, Hercules Movers.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Turning now to matters on behalf of the Law Bureau, commencing on page 17 of the agenda, with regard to the first item involving the petition of People's TWP LLC for a waiver of the Commission's regulations. It is recommended that the Commission adopt that recommendation, noting your statement, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to again have the statement entered into the record if read its entirety. Just a very simple request that was put forth here this morning by the company. And based on my review of it, we support obviously granting the waiver of section 62.35 and subsections 1 through 4. The company is simply requesting the ability to coordinate a customer outreach initiative using a third-party vendor to move from a direct mail survey platform to a new telephonic survey means. This waiver request, in my view, is reasonable in that it allows the company to begin to realize the benefits and efficiencies flowing from its recent merger by using new means of technology to better communicate with its customers. I also encourage the company to look into using some type of internet protocol survey vehicle as well for their customer base. The requested modification here this morning clearly demonstrates both the technological and customer service advantages of using telephonic surveys over mail-in surveys, as the new telephonic survey allows the company to more effectively communicate with customers on a cost-effective basis. Now, I remind the company that if a customer did sign up for the Attorney General's Do Not Call list, that they be cognizant of that and not probably make that call at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock when we're all sitting down to have dinner. I know how people get irritated by those robocalls. Upon further review of the request, in the event that other utilities want to make similar requests, the Commission should explore the appropriateness of a rulemaking process to change this regulation permanently. This way, we can allow utilities to fully implement new technology upgrades, in this case, the telephonic survey systems to benefit their customers. Again, I'd like to have the statement entered into the record, and if there's any further discussion on this case, any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended on behalf of the Law Bureau that the Commission adopt the recommendation with regard to the Verizon North LLC petition for a bona fide retail request deployment extension.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Office of Administrative Law Judge, on page 18 of the public meeting agenda, with regard to the initial decision of ALJ Hoyer in the proceeding involving the complaint of Michael Klein versus Pennsylvania Electric Company, there is the motion of Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Brown for purposes of her motion. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before the Commission is the complaint of Michael Klein against Pennsylvania Electric Company, or Penelec, alleging that the company placed incorrect charges on his bills. The record in this proceeding shows that on June 18, 2012, the company notified the complainant that his account would be rebilled for the period from December 12, 2011 to June 11, 2012. Penelec had incorrectly used estimated meter reads for the complainant's December 2011, February 2012, and April 2012 bills. This resulted in an undercollection of $2,049.36. The record in this case indeed proves that Penelec is correcting an error that will allow the company to collect revenues for actual service rendered. As such, there is no disputing that the company is correctly charging the complainant for the amount of electricity consumed. However, the record also shows that the billing correction was caused by an admitted error by the company. As detailed above, Penelec incorrectly billed the customer for estimated readings when it should have used actual readings. This resulted in the complainant being billed 5 billing periods in a row based on estimated reads. Consequently, the complainant received improper billing signals over a 5-month period. I believe that Penelec failed to comply with the Commission's regulations requiring that estimated bills only be rendered every other billing period. Further, I submit that Penelec's failure to send the complainant proper billing signals over the 5-month period constitutes a failure to comply with the mandate under Section 1501 of the Public Utility Code to provide adequate and efficient service. In addition, the record in this proceeding fails to provide any good faith explanation as to why the company made these billing errors. As such, I believe that the circumstances of this proceeding justify the placement of a $500 civil penalty on the company. Therefore, I move that the Office of Special Assistance draft an appropriate order consistent with this motion.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, that concludes the presentation of regular agenda items. Turning now to the carry-in agenda and matters on behalf of the Director of Regulatory Operations. It is recommended that the Commission adopt, on behalf of the Director of Regulatory Operations, the first item, which pertains to the rulemaking to changing electric generation suppliers. This pertains to an amendment of the regulations that addresses the process for transferring a customer's account from a default service provider to a competitive electric generation supplier and from one supplier to another supplier. And due to changes in the competitive retail electric market and the advent of new technologies, since the adoption of these regulations, the Commission has reviewed the regulations, previous relevant orders, comments from the public and interested parties seeking to accelerate the switching process. And the Director of Regulatory Operations recommends the adoption of that final omitted rulemaking order.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Again, on behalf of the Director of Regulatory Operations, there is a recommendation to adopt the final omitted rulemaking order with regard to revising the regulations for residential and small business customers to ensure EGS disclosure statements include an EGS contract summary and additional information for variable price products and cancellation fees.
So moved. Second. Any discussion?
Yes, Chairman.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley for purposes of a statement. Commissioner Cawley.
I'm voting for both of these final amended rulemakings, but I can't let these actions go without saying something about the travails that customers have suffered as a result of not only the severe weather, but the pass-through of wholesale electric increases on their bills. I think we all need to know that it wasn't just the weather that caused all of this heartache among ratepayers. The weather certainly had something to do with it. PJM, the electric grid, recorded 8 of the 10 highest usage periods since such things have been recorded. I don't think any of us underestimated the effect of the weather. But it wasn't just the weather. This commission has received literally thousands of informal complaints about the increases in their bills. I think we can share some of the blame, and we're trying to fix some things that perhaps should have been done earlier. But this is primarily a problem that was created in the wholesale electricity market. That's regulated by the PJM interconnection. It's regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and it brings home the importance of a robust and well-regulated wholesale electricity market and its effect on the retail market, which we regulate. We are suffering the complaints and having to deal with the complaints and the heartaches of customers primarily because of failings in the wholesale electricity market. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you one example. We're primarily talking about the power plants, the generators who provide power into the electric grid from which PPL and MedEd and other of our electric distribution companies receive their power. That market failed. It failed us in this regard at least. There are a number of generators who receive capacity payments, meaning they are paid to stand by and be ready to provide power when it is needed. PJM, for whatever reason, stopped testing a number of these people receiving capacity payments, and almost a third of them did not deliver when the power was needed. And as a result, voltage reductions were necessary, and we came very close to having brownouts or even blackouts in Pennsylvania because of the failure of those generators to deliver, even though they're being paid to be ready to do so. That is simply unacceptable. And to make matters worse, those same generators and PJM have the unmitigated gall to criticize those providers of demand response, those entities which encourage conservation and can deliver reductions in usage within a very short period of time. If it had not been for those demand response providers and those who voluntarily gave up usage, we would have had a much more serious problem. And it certainly would have happened if this cold snap had lasted longer than it did. We came very close. And it could happen again. It could happen in the summer as well as in the winter. I also place some of the blame on some of our electric generation suppliers who offer variable rates and who led people into believe that they would always receive a competitive rate, and yet had not provided and contracted for supply ahead of time, and instead acquire their power the day before or the day of when it had to be delivered. And therefore, they got caught in the higher prices that PJM was charging, that the wholesale market was demanding, and they then try to pass those higher costs on to their customers. I don't want electric generation suppliers in our marketplace who are that close to, if not bankruptcy, at least having to pass along costs that could have been avoided had they had the financial wherewithal to acquire the power ahead of time. We can do without people like that. I do praise those electric generation suppliers who have been lenient with their customers, have given them breaks when they received complaints. I give them a lot of credit. Those who at least allowed payments over a period of time. I like those kinds of electric generation suppliers, and I'm happy we have them in our marketplace. Finally, I blame myself. I have spent an awful lot of my time promoting electric competition, and I believe in it fervently, that it's good for Pennsylvania. I don't have any doubt about that at all. But on the same time, I blame myself because I have many, many, many times told customers in my speeches and talks to customers, stay away from variable electric prices. Because I believe that the legislature intended as one of the benefits of electric competition that customers would be able to gain the certainty of a fixed price for a fixed period of time. Variable pricing is a month-to-month price. You don't know what your costs are going to be into the future. You should stay away from that kind of what I view as speculation. I personally have locked in an electric price and a gas price 24 months ahead. It may not be the best price, but it's a good and fair price. And I encourage everyone to do the same. And finally, I really lament the damage that this has done to electric choice and to gas choice as well. I'm sorry that a lot of people have been burned by this whole experience and who will not shop again. They've gone back to their electric distribution company and probably a higher price. That's too bad. It really is too bad. And I'm hoping that with the efforts that we're making today, which I view as very measured, because there are those in the legislature who want to legislate in this area. We're taking measures today which, again, are measured within the authority that the legislature has given us. We do not have the authority to regulate the prices of electric generation suppliers. The marketplace and true competition should keep those market prices down. And it's only when you have failures, particularly in the wholesale electricity market, not our retail market, that this kind of heartache has been visited on customers. I lament that, and I encourage customers to come back into the market and to shop and to lock in a fixed price for a fixed period of time, and when the term of your contract is up, pay attention and make another choice. Don't let the contract lapse, and you possibly then will have to be in on a month-to-month basis again with a variable price. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to vote for these two rulemakings.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawley. Commissioner Whitmer, I'd like to recognize you for an oral statement as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, like my colleagues, am pleased to be able to support these two final amended regulations. I think that the Commission has taken two very important steps today that will help to solidify Pennsylvania's position as being both pro-consumer and pro-competitive markets. One of the first changes that we did today was the change to the disclosure requirements that will provide more transparency and clarity to the products that are being offered and place more information in the hands of consumers so that they can make more well-informed decisions. However, in my view, the more important and more impactful of the two regulatory changes that we undertook today is the reduction in time that it takes to switch from a default supplier to an EGS or from one EGS to another. Requiring that a customer be switched in 3 days versus the current standard of up to 45 days accomplishes, in my opinion, at least 4 things. Reducing the time that it takes for a customer to move from one supplier to another is, in and of itself, from my perspective, an important consumer protection. Equally important is the positive impact the reduced switching time frame will have on the competitive supplier community to more quickly and nimbly develop and offer products that more realistically reflect what is happening in the market, which has the potential to alleviate situations that we recently experienced. Third, this change will incent EGSs to be more responsive to consumer needs around ancillary services and other types of reward programs. And lastly, this will make it possible for consumers to permanently move away from their EDC. Giving consumers more tools, in my view, will only make the market stronger. In spite of the recent circumstances that have led us to this point, history continues to show that consumers will have greater choice of products and services in a properly structured, deregulated market. As these two significant pro-consumer changes are implemented, many eyes are going to be on the Commission, on the EGSs, and on the EDCs to ensure that we are all working together to ensure that both the spirit and the real language in the regulations are achieved. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank our staff at the Commission, including some emerging leaders who have worked very hard to pull these two very important regulatory packages together for our consideration today.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Vice Chairman, any comments?
Well, Chairman, I would just like to associate myself with the comments that have been made this morning by both of my colleagues. This is obviously a critical issue and a turning point here in the competitive marketplace. And I think that Commissioner Colley really sums it up well to say that we hope that customers are not deterred from participating in a competitive marketplace. But I think the lesson that we have all learned in this is that it's important to be informed and educated and make sure that you clearly understand the products that you're in, clearly understand the disclosure and the language associated with that disclosure. And I believe that our actions this morning are certainly a move in the right direction to assure consumers that we are making adjustments as the market requires.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I guess I'll do the wrap up here, or bat cleanup, as we've had opening day season here. And let me just say, this commission this is a watershed moment for the commission, the second one in the history of retail competition. And Commissioner Colley, I'm going to take a page out of your playbook, but I will be brief. The first watershed moment came when rate caps came off, and it was a very tumultuous time. And I looked at the work of this commission, our Law Bureau, our Office of Competitive Market Oversight, and the work that we were able to do leading up to the expiration of rate caps, and to see where we are today with over 2.2 million customers out there shopping. Obviously, the second watershed moment was what happened this past January with the polar vortex pricing that hit a segment of customers that had affirmatively signed up for variable rate product. And I'm sit back and look at some root cause analysis in terms of customers. If you go back and we, the commission, thanks to the efforts of our Bureau of Consumer Services, as we're taking these inquiries and we're having some of these inquiries go more a formal route through our investigation and enforcement unit, that we're finding that some customers probably from a risk tolerance perspective should have never signed up for these products. Was there a failure in the wholesale power markets? That question still remains to be answered. I will say this, though, today's actions clearly demonstrates that the Commission is ideally positioned to tackle these issues. And I want to reiterate what Commissioner Colley and what Commissioner Whitmer and Vice Chairman Coleman mentioned here this morning, and that is we have a steadfast commitment to not only promoting electric competition here in the state, but more importantly, in what we're doing here today, as I say, putting the training wheels back on these variable rate products. And so with ample customer notification, and I use the word ample customer notification, that customers who have a risk tolerance, who affirmatively agree to sign up for a variable rate product, not realizing that, as Commissioner Colley said, and I use the term solar vortex could hit in June, July, or August, where we could be back at this again if we have a run-up in wholesale power prices where we have peak demand during the summer. I think today's actions, one, if we get the accelerated switching done along with proper notification to customers, we have taken a risk element out of the market, so it's a much smoother process for customers. I am shocked, saddened, and angered by our electric distribution companies and their association that's represented in this room today. This commission rewarded you with accelerated deployment of smart meter technology, and to your lack of visionary leadership, and I say that because you deserve it, you have done nothing to build the back office systems to recognize that you're in a retail market environment where that new meter that is out there now in the field, that the customers won't be able to get real-time information, and we, as a regulatory agency, have to force you to do that. And I keep hearing the numbers, and you guys come up with more numbers in the Wharton Business School when it comes to how much these systems cost, but shame on you for not thinking this far ahead. And that goes back to monopolistic tendencies and the inability to recognize market conditions. And I'm chastising you here this morning because it's the five of us that now have this problem to deal with, to get that information behind that meter real time to customers. And by the way, I know we have some media here this morning. Go to the state of Texas and ask the question how fast a customer can switch on their meter. And I know the answer, but I'll let you all do it and do a homework assignment this weekend. We need to get there, and that's what we're doing here today. Unfortunately, we're doing it via regulatory outcome. So I will stop because I think we're unified. We're using our collective cloud here this morning to send a very loud and clear message to consumers that, one, the protections will remain in place for variable rate suppliers offering products. At the end of the day, if we do find, through the formal process of investigation enforcement, if we do find customers who were slammed, hoodwinked into signing off on a contract they should have never signed off on, or there were bait and switch tactics in selling this product, I can tell you right now, personally, I have zero tolerance. We're not going to play the 3-strike rule with some of these suppliers. That's me personally. I don't prejudge any commissioner up here in case we have an enforcement action. And lastly, again, I want to just commend our Bureau of Consumer Services and all the work that they've done. We have people here in this building on the second floor that have worked overtime. They have done the Lord's work in getting customers in a very safe place in dealing with these situations with variable rate pricing. And I want to commend them here. I think all of us want to commend them for the work that they're doing. But I'm also proud to say this commission is ideally positioned in tackling these issues, and today clearly demonstrates that. With that, is there any further comments? Commissioner Brown, I cannot let you off the hook here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too join in with my colleagues in all the comments that they have made, but I also want to thank the staff for all the work that they have done, because I've been going out in the trenches as well, going to some consumer events. I'm going to one tonight in Bethlehem and talking to them about the things that we have done here at the Commission and the things that we will continue to do. So my congratulations to the staff as well, and I will be supporting these 2 rulemakings.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. And I believe, Cheryl, we have voted on both motions.
Yes, we have, Mr. Chairman.
And we'll turn over to the next case before we adjourn.
Yes, but I would also note a correction to the agenda. It references the Director of Regulatory Operations. The recommendation is from the Office of Competitive Market Oversight under the Executive Director.
So noted.
Now turning to the next item, Mr. Chairman, it is recommended that the Commission ratify the appointment of a new Director of Regulatory Affairs.
So moved.
Second.
And I will certainly have a discussion point here this morning. I was going to have an envelope like it's the Oscars and we're looking at the candidate, but I can't do that to Mary Beth Osborne. And I want to recognize with Mary Beth this morning her husband, Kevin. It's a great day for this commission. And by the way, we're going from a low point now to a high point. I want to be in a good footing here. But my colleagues and I are proud to announce this morning, starting on May 5th, Mary Beth Osborne will serve as has been selected by our search committee, which I want to recognize Jan Freeman, our executive director, Bob Garola, our director of administration, and our chief counsel, Buck Panque, for their excellent work in identifying this candidate. After a thorough search, we are confident that Mary Beth will prove to be a great leader and an asset to the commission. I think that goes without question. And as the new Director of Regulatory Affairs, she'll supervise 5 bureaus consisting of nearly 500 employees, and I think my first item will be to drop off a bottle of Advil for her. And she will have reporting responsibilities to our Executive Director, Jan Freeman. And Mary Beth is currently a legal counsel advisor to Commissioner Cawley, a position she's held for 9 years. And prior to that, she had a very significant role in serving our former Attorney General, Mike Fisher, and she was a Chief Deputy Attorney General under, actually it was Mike Fisher and prior to that as well, and I think Corp 5 Attorney General, so you're certainly battle-tested. Let me just say this, and I had the opportunity to interview Mary Beth. I know I want to commend Commissioners Whitmer and Brown as well. We have found the right candidate for this job, and I can say that because I've seen Mary Beth in action. She's got a very steady hand. She's got a nice Irish wit about her, but more importantly, she's a person who's got a big heart, and she listens, and she's jumping into a role that it's a huge role for this commission, and I know she's going to do great work. We had a lot of great candidates, internal candidates, external candidates, but at the end of the day, we unanimously came to the conclusion that Mary Beth is the right fit. And I could take all the accolades here, but I'm not, because I think it's appropriate that I recognize Commissioner Cawley, who spent 9 great years with Mary Beth And I know under his breath, he's like, what the hell am I going to do when she leaves me? As I like to say, that's not my problem, that's your problem. So Commissioner Cawley, I'm going to recognize you before we call the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm tempted to vigorously dissent, but I won't do that. I'm reminded many years ago I served with a distinguished commissioner, Frank Fischel. Frank Fischel was retired Air Force colonel. He had been decorated with the Silver Star for gallantry for a particularly dangerous mission in North Vietnam that he successfully completed. He was a grand guy. He's still living. He lives in the Allentown area. Wonderful fellow to serve with. I went into his office one day because he was losing a really valuable member of his staff. And I said, Frank, what are you going to do without this person? And he looked me straight in the eye. He said, my military experience has taught me that you never stand in the way of someone's promotion. You enthusiastically support them, and you do the best you can without them and try to replace them, but you don't stand in the way. And I certainly would not stand in the way of Mary Beth's promotion. I'll never forget, we ran into each other 9 years ago. We'd been friends for a long time. She had served ably and well, as the chairman noted, in the Attorney General's office, dealing with really controversial stuff. She headed the charitable, the name is Charitable Trusts and Organizations section. She dealt with some really difficult stuff there. She supervised 40 attorneys. She was battle-tested, as the chairman said. She had, I probably reluctantly given up that work, but duty called. Her children needed her at home, so she had been raising children, and she wanted to return to the workplace because those children were now going to go to college. And I said, well, I happen to have a place on my staff. Would you consider coming with me? And she said, I don't know anything about public utility law. I said, well, that's not a disqualification. We'll teach you. Because I knew she was smart and a hard worker. And I knew because of her personality, she would quickly be beloved by everyone. And that's exactly what happened. And we started her out reading all of the mountain of paper that we get every day, every week in preparation for this public meeting and all of our other duties. And she read and read and read, and she worked cooperatively with our staff, our experienced people here. And lo and behold, she has become a crackerjack public utility lawyer and a wonderful advisor to me. And I know that her personality and her communication skills are going to serve her very well in this new job, which is a very big job. And she's going to do just great. I'm going to make the sacrifice for the greater good. But if my work quality falls off, you'll know why. I wish her well, Mary Beth. You're not going to be very far away, but I know that you're going to be busy with other things, and I'm going to be wishing you well every day. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. Now, I can't applaud yet because we haven't voted yet.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to forget that as we're. But any other commissioners like to make a comment before we call the vote? Vice Chairman, I'm going to defer to you to give me that honorable second.
Second.
Any further discussion? No objections here this morning. And Mary Beth, I want you to stand, and we want to recognize you. Now, this isn't a retirement, so you don't get to give a speech. Before we adjourn public meeting, I'd like to recognize the Vice Chairman, who is going to recognize this morning the proclamation set forth by Governor Corbett, and it's to kick off Safe Digging Month. And let me just recognize the Vice Chairman as the go-to guy on gas safety to address this morning's matter, and that's the Safe Digging Month. Vice Chairman.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and you can see the pressure's on to make sure we continue on a high note and finish on a high note this morning, so I certainly recognize that. And in the spirit of this beautiful blue sky day and being the beginning of baseball season, I want to formally recognize that April is Safe Digging Month in Pennsylvania. And just want to remind, I know that most of you in the audience recognize this, that the greatest threat to our utility infrastructure in Pennsylvania is not aged infrastructure, but it is third-party contractor hits to the infrastructure in Pennsylvania. And that happens more than 6,000 times a year. So this is an initiative that the chairman asked me to lead to see if we can do something about changing that trajectory, put us on a path where we can reduce those line hits here in Pennsylvania. And recognizing April as Safe Digging Month is certainly one of those pieces of this strategy. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize and give a shout out to the folks in Pennsylvania that are really the face of the safe digging process and the PA one-call system. And those are our friends in Pittsburgh that run the PA one-call program under the leadership of Bill Kiger and do a very, very successful job in Pennsylvania. In fact, Pennsylvania is recognized nationally as having one of the best one-call systems. So we certainly want to recognize them this morning. So I'll just conclude very quickly and say, again, thank you all for participating. I know many of you have very robust programs. In fact, we should have gotten Columbia's Digger Dog here this morning to do a presentation for you, but unfortunately we didn't act quickly enough to do that. But again, just remind all of you and keep up the good work. And those of you who are planning on digging, please make sure you call 811. So thank you this morning, and Chairman, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Are there any further items to come before the commission?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing none, we are adjourned.